I find myself using S and P all the time. There's a similar way to use alternative, um, as you'll see down below, one of the very last categories under the subordinate clause, and that one I think I use quite frequently. But S and P are two that I use all the time. Now, this first set of categories, which we'll just call it way to an end or action manner, you could use either one, way to an end or an action manner. It says a statement of an action and one which tells more explicitly what is involved in carrying out this action. So, you know, what is the action and what is the manner of the action? So you would state, you know, pray and do so without ceasing, or something like that. What's the way? What's the action? Well, the action is prayer, and the manner in which you go about it is without ceasing, or pray continually with knowledge and discernment, which is something you hear in Paul, something like that all the time. So that would be an action, and then the manner involved in carrying out the action. Quite common in the New Testament. And then a comparison, they've got these like kind of sideways dashes here. It's a statement that clarifies an action or an idea by showing what it is like. So you see this in English, even as, or just as, or as this, so this. And you're making a comparison between two things. And when you have that, you connect the two by a little bracket, and then in between that bracket, you just put these little dashes, these little sideways, to show that they're a parallel statement. Just as grace came to the Jews through the law, so also grace comes to the world through Jesus Christ. There's a comparison between those two. Now, negative and positive, we've already talked about a bit, or positive and negative. And you could put them in whichever order they come. A man is not justified by works of the law, that's negative, but through faith in Jesus Christ, that's the positive. So the bracket would be there, the top one would have negative, and the positive statement would have positive. Or, if the positive statement comes first, you know, you might want to flip it around and put the positive sign, and then the negative sign. So we are saved by grace through faith, not of works, to kind of paraphrase from Ephesians 2. And we're plus, saved by grace through faith, so you put the plus sign first, and negative, not through works, so that no one might boast. General, specific, just GNSP, a statement of a whole, and one or more statements which set forth the various component parts of the whole. So you have a general statement, and then the specific breaks it down into pieces. And I think there'll be an example of this in the Galatians, so we'll do that one. Keywords would be that is, for, fact interpretation. I think Schreiner has a different idea explanation is what he has. You can see I've kind of scribbled it on this. IDEX, I think, is what Tom Schreiner uses in his book. And so either one is fine. And again, this isn't an exact science. So this is just to help you get to the bottom of what's happening in the text. Fact interpretation would say a statement and a clarifying statement. This definition says it does not set forth a distinguishable part of the preceding whole. So an idea and an explanation, you have a general idea and then it's explained. And so that way, you could also maybe say general, specific. You could see the same sort of thing happening there. So they're pretty close. The next ones are the supporting kind of relationships in the subordinate clauses. And so if you see a G, or if you use a G, that is for the ground, the statement followed by the argument or reason on which it stands. Supporting proposition follows the supported proposition. Now that gets really tricky, but you'll see why it matters when we get to inference in just a second. So for the ground, it's wherever you see, and usually see for or because in the English. That's the real key if you're looking at a ground. And I'll just make up a sentence. For no one is saved by doing works of the law, for justification comes through faith in Jesus Christ. And so the ground, the little g, would be next to the statement that gives you the reason. No one's saved by works. Well, why is that? Because, or for, that's the foundation for the statement you just made. For, justification comes through faith in Jesus Christ. Since that is the case, that is the ground on which you say the first statement. No one's saved by works. Well, how do you say that? On what basis? On the basis or the ground or the foundation of the fact that Christ, in his faithfulness and faith in him, justifies us. So you'll see for, or you'll see that, since, because, for. That will indicate that you're going to have a sentence that's giving you the ground for what was just said. Right? Now the inference, the supporting statement is followed by a conclusion drawn from it. The supporting proposition precedes the supported proposition. So this is just like ground, except it's backwards. And it usually, thus or therefore, consequently would be what you have said. And it would say, justification comes through faith in Jesus Christ. Therefore, no human being can boast in their own works. So the statement that you draw an inference from, you're drawing an inference from the first statement, since Jesus Christ and faith in him justifies, therefore, there's no basis for boasting for humans. And so next to the therefore, you would put this little cool vibey little, triangle. And I have no idea why people use that, but I just think it looks cool. But it's to indicate inference. I just think it's better than an I. Now, I didn't create this sheet. I inherited this sheet. But I do think you'll get used to noticing that that's an inference. So again, ground, you'll have the statement that serves as a foundation comes after the sentence. And it will say, for, and then justification comes through faith in Jesus Christ. Whereas with inference, the statement will come first. Justification comes through faith in Jesus Christ. Therefore, no one can earn their salvation. And so you're drawing, in making a further statement that draws on the already stated truth when you do an inference. Whereas with the ground, you state the truth and then you back it up with a causal statement. And we'll see a couple examples of that. Cause and effect, or action and result, CE, or I guess AR if you want to go action result. One action and another action which results from the first as an automatic sequence. That, so that, with the result that. We see this all the time. Something, I'll just make something up. The love of God has been poured into your hearts so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord. The action is that God has poured his love into our hearts. This is sort of like just paraphrasing Romans and other Pauline stuff. The action is that God has poured his love into our hearts so that, with the result that, or just even that, you might live a life worthy to God. So that is to say, the result of the action of God pouring love into your heart, it results in you're living a worthy life. And so all you do is draw a bracket. On the top one, you'd put C. On the bottom one, you'd put E. Or, if you use action result, A and R. Conditional, a C with an exclamation point. And so you see there's many different possibilities here. And you might be thinking, how am I ever going to remember these? Well, you use a sheet like this, or you use Schreiner's book to just start to get a feel for these and say, what is it? Is it this? Is it this? You have to do kind of trial and error. It could be, and you may come down to a few conclusions. It could be a ground or an inference or a cause and effect. And then you try and pick the one that seems most applicable to the propositions that you're connecting. And do it in pencil because you might want to change these things. And understand that this is a process that takes time and time and time. Every time you do this, you'll get better at it. And you'll probably, even when you make one, continue to chip away at it and try and perfect it. The goal really is to get you deeper into the logical mind of the author as you're exegeting what you take to be the author's intention in making the argument in this fashion. So back to this. Conditional, C with an exclamation point and E. It says, like cause and effect, except the existence of the cause is only a potential. It could also be like an if-then statement, if you want to think of it like that. Like, if you... I just drew a total blank. If you don't charge your phone, then it will eventually stop working. So it's conditional. The condition is, if you don't do this, then this will happen. Or if you do behave in this manner, then this will be the thing that happens. So it's an if-then kind of thing. And that's pretty frequent. So just keep an eye out for those, because those, once you spot them, that's a C with the exclamation point. I mean, with the question mark, and then